Sometimes what we need most is not an answer, but simply a place of deep calm. A place free from deadlines, free from notifications, free from the tug of war between past and future. A place where only breath, wind, and silence so profound that you can touch your true self exist. If you are weary, unsure what to do with the ceaseless stream of thoughts, if you lie awake in the dead of night, your eyes wide open despite how many times you've tried to close them, then this video is meant for you. You are about to step into a monastery that cannot be found on any map. A place that appears only when the mind is still enough, and the soul is ready to listen. A place where Zen stories will whisper words of awakening on your behalf. You do not need to try to understand, nor to remember. Just release. Let each word, each breath, each image gently flow into you like moonlight drifting across a lake. And perhaps, amid the thin layers of mist in the night, you will rediscover yourself, for whom you have been searching all along. Picture yourself walking along a narrow mountain path strewn with fragile pine needles turned golden under the pale moonlight. Each step is gentle, as though you are gliding through the memories of other pilgrims who once trod this way. People who carried within them an unnamed weariness. There are no vehicles, no phone signals, only the wind playing among tall branches and the occasional hum of insects. Like nature's tender reminder, your breath begins to slow. Not from effort but because this silent space teaches you to breathe anew, more slowly, more deeply, as though each inhalation and exhalation cleanses burdens you've carried for so long. The scent of young pine and night mist blends into a pure fragrance, indescribable, yet curiously comforting. Under the chilly, silvery moonlight, a massive wooden gate appears ahead, etched with ancient characters blurred by time. Yet your heart seems to understand their meaning without translation. Whoever steps through here will leave the old world behind, to return to the world within. Standing beside the gate is a monk, thin in build, yet his eyes shine like moonlight dancing on water. No introductions, no rituals. He simply bows gently and hands you a string of wooden beads, each small bead glowing with a warm light as though it has held thousands of nights of silent meditation. When you touch it lightly, the tangled thoughts in your mind soften, like thick clouds finally beginning to part, revealing a clear sky behind them. You understand that you no longer need to go anywhere. Passing through this gate is not about going somewhere else, it's about returning. Return to a part of yourself you have long forgotten. There is no sound of the gate opening, no heavy footsteps, only the sensation that you have melted into a space without borders, where every burden you once thought heavy now rests lightly fallen like a drifting leaf. Within the monastery courtyard draped in thin mist, where moonlight melts into silvery milk on ancient stones, you follow an invisible guide, allowing your body to merge with the slow rhythm of a place that seems immune to time. Everything here breathes with you, from the cherry trees quietly shedding petals like layers of thought falling away, to a small pond in the corner of the courtyard where the moon's reflection forms a perfect luminous circle, so still that you see your own reflection, not of a weary body, but of a tranquil, weightless face, as if all inner struggles have been cleansed away. In that soft light, a young woman emerges from the monastery's memory, Carver, the wanderer who has spent 3 years seeking an enlightened teacher. From hidden mountain temples to remote villages touched by wind and snow, driven by nearly blind faith that somewhere out there, a master held the key to peace. Her journey spanned day after month, only to receive repetition in return. Like the wind, the teacher was here, but has gone, until one autumn night, her exhausted feet came to rest beside a quiet pond. The full moon shone bright, transforming into hundreds of tiny moons shimmering on soft ripples. She bent down to touch the nearest moon, and all those shimmering reflections shattered like broken mirrors across the water, startling her into pulling her hand back with a piercing ache. As if she had shattered something sacred she did not yet understand. In that moment, from the dark forest behind her, a figure appeared, a silver-haired old woman, simply dressed, yet each step radiated wisdom beyond words. The woman sat next to her without a single question or lesson, just gazing at the pond as it regained its stillness. The reflected moons reforming one by one as though undisturbed. When she spoke, her first question was not, "What are you seeking?" but instead drifted softly like wind through leaves. "How many moons do you see in the pond?" Carver answered with the obvious truth, "Many." But when the old woman asked, "So how many moons are in the sky?" she suddenly realized that all she saw were reflections of one single moon. The woman's final question, "Which moon is the real one?" stunned her. For the first time in her search she could not answer with logic. Only a rising feeling like an underground stream within. When the old woman smiled and said, "The one you seek never left. Your master has always been here." In the very awareness that sees those moons, something broke open inside Carver, not despair, but relief so deep that silent tears rolled down her cheeks. In that moment, she saw clearly. There is no journey to find, no teacher out there, no knowledge to possess, only a stillness that has always been waiting for her to return. As the image of Carver sitting quietly by the pond lingers, moonlight softly casting its glow on a tear-streaked face no longer weighed down by sorrow, only filled with the release of a profound realization. Something similar is quietly unfolding within you. You, who are listening, you, who are breathing evenly in the darkness, you, who are slowly realizing that this story is not about some distant stranger, but a mirror reflecting your very own consciousness. Maybe you too have searched for something out there, peace, love, a teacher, an answer, as if it always existed somewhere far away, in someone else, in a perfect situation, in some future moment yet to arrive. Perhaps you have believed that only when everything in your life is in place, will you finally be allowed to feel peace. But in the light of the story you just heard, a new doorway quietly opens, suggesting that what you have been looking for has never left you. It does not reside in lofty books, nor behind success or accolades, nor hidden in moments when others approve of you. It is the presence that is hearing these words right now. The awareness that is feeling your body lying on a bed or sitting still in the quiet of night. Just as there is only one true moon reflected 100 times across the water. Your essence, your awareness, your witnessing, your silent knowing, has always been there. You just have not looked directly at it. We have become so used to chasing our own reflections, trying to become better, wiser, more successful, happier, never realizing that the one witnessing all of these efforts has never needed to change. That witness is the quiet teacher, the deep presence that has never disappeared, even in moments of failure, despair, or confusion. When there is no longer a search, what needs to be seen will reveal itself. When you stop trying to understand, wisdom will arise. When you no longer reach out to stir the water, the real moon reflects fully in your heart. And if right now, you feel even the slightest lightness, if something inside you slows down, softens, breathes more deeply, then perhaps the first seed has just been planted. You do not need to do anything with it. Just let it grow in the night. Let the moonlight of awareness continue to light your path, where the next lessons await you in silent gentleness, while the moon continues its quiet journey across the sky like a companion that never speaks. Your path through the monastery of moonlight leads to a new space, where every wall is gently warmed by the glow of small candles. These flames are not meant to light the way, but to remind you of the light within. Here, the second story begins like a wisp of incense spreading through stillness. The story of a merchant named Bahram, a man richer than anyone in his region, possessing all that others dreamed of, yet carrying within him a constant chill, an emptiness no treasure could fill. Surrounded by gold, silk, and rare spices, he lay awake night after night, as if some important door in his life had never been opened. One day, amidst the hustle of a bustling marketplace, he encountered a stranger, worn clothes, no possessions except a weathered wooden bowl, and yet, eyes glowing with a joy that could not be explained, a kind of happiness that did not come from wealth, but from a depth that could not be bought. Drawn to that gaze like a cool breeze across a desert, Bahram approached with a direct question. "Why do you look happier than me?" "When I have everything," the wanderer simply smiled and replied that joy does not come from what we own, but from the ability to recognize the preciousness within the simplest of things. Then he invited Bahram to leave the city and follow him to a very different place. No treasure, no guards, no ledgers of profit, just open fields, fresh air, and a pure atmosphere that awakened every sense. That night, by a small fire under a sky full of stars, they shared a humble meal of bread and dates, and drank cold stream water scooped from the rocks. But Bahram had never tasted a meal so rich, never inhaled the scent of burning wood so comforting. When the wanderer handed him a plain gray stone, saying it was his most treasured possession, Bahram was puzzled, but as he looked closer, he saw in that stone a reflection of the flame, the starry sky, and even himself sitting quietly, as if the stone did not reflect the outer world but revealed an inner one he had never touched. Then, the wanderer whispered, "Wealth does not lie in the number of things we have, but in how deeply we can feel and appreciate. One who has little but feels complete is richer than the one who owns the world and still feels lacking." Bahram did not reply. He simply looked at his own hands, hands that had held so much gold, and now held a nameless stone as if it were the first true treasure he had ever known. In that moment, he was no longer the wealthy merchant known across the land, but a child rediscovering the clear eyes to see the world as if for the very first time. And if you, lying there in the darkness of your familiar room, holding nothing but a thin blanket, head resting on a pillow while your mind still drifts through unfinished worries, if you feel something stirring in you, then perhaps what Bahram found is quietly calling to you as well. You do not need a special stone. You do not need to leave your city or your job. All it takes is to pause long enough to recognize that true treasures have never been hidden. They are simply blurred by speed. by expectations, by our constant counting of what we lack instead of honoring what is already here. You may have believed that happiness would arrive someday, when you have enough money, enough time, enough recognition, but as Bahram sat by that small fire, sipping tea from an old wooden bowl and looking up at the endless sky, he understood. Richness does not come from quantity, but from the quality of our attention. And you, too, lying in the same bed you have lain in for years, tonight, because you are listening with an open heart, that bed may feel like a gentle cradle, rocking you back closer to yourself. Wealth is no longer about possession, but about being fully present. A sip of water when you are thirsty, a nap when you are tired, a deep breath when your heart is stormy. These are riches no one can take, no one can sell, no time can erode. This is the only kind of treasure that grows larger the more you give it away in gratitude. Just like the stone Bahram kept in his pocket, not for its material worth, but because it reminded him daily that true wealth is the ability to see the beauty already unfolding in life's simplest moments. And if tonight, you touch your blanket, feel your heartbeat, sense the warmth around you, then maybe, just maybe, you have found your own treasure too, without ever needing to go anywhere at all. In the stillness of the night, as the moon's gentle rays linger on cold stone, your journey leads you to a wide courtyard. Columns of ancient wood, draped in green moss, support a moss-covered roof, a silent reminder that time flows like a river no one can touch twice. A distant bell tolls, as if summoned from another realm, opening a third gate, the gate of letting go, where the lesson of impermanence is not taught with philosophy but etched into a lifetime. There, you encounter Tenzin, not through words, but through every bridge he spent 40 years building. Bridges spanning rugged chasms, connecting one village to another, bridging people with people, hopes across distances once deemed impassable. After all those remarkable feats, Tenzin nurtured one ultimate dream: to build the greatest bridge he could. A bridge spanning two sacred peaks that no one had ever believed could be joined. For 3 years, he poured every rupee he'd saved, every ounce of skill, and every beat of his heart into that dream. A bridge not merely for crossing, but a symbol of love, passion, and human will against the vastness of nature. When the bridge was complete, people wept at its beauty, like witnessing a true miracle on earth. Yet only one night later, the greatest storm in decades thundered down. The flood roared, obliterating the structure without hesitation and sweeping away the work of his lifetime. The next morning, Tenzin stood still amid the ruins, fragments scattered like his heart, torn into 100 pieces. He did not cry for gold or glory, but for the loss of his deepest dream, to leave something timeless behind. Yet in that despair, a young monk appeared, silent and present as a single lamp in a dark room. He did not lecture, he simply stayed by Tenzin's side all afternoon, embodying presence itself. When he finally spoke, he chose not to explain but to share what he'd heard, that someone crossed that bridge only once. And in that day's crossing, someone renounced greed. Another couple rediscovered love. Someone who thought humanity lost was reminded that true beauty still exists. Lives were changed, just in the bridge's brief moment of existence. Hearing this, Tenzin understood. Beauty does not require permanence to be profound. Devotion does not need to be remembered to be immortal. A complete moment can be more powerful than a lifetime. Then he grasped that the bridge was never truly destroyed. Material things may vanish, but what touches the heart remains forever. The following season, from the land shaped by the flood, stones naturally surfaced, forming a gentle path across the stream, not man-made, but nature itself inheriting the spirit of the old bridge and creating a new, gentle way. When Tenzin returned and saw those stone steps, he realized that what he thought lost had been reborn, not as grand, but subtle, natural, compelling anyone who stepped across to pause, to feel, to listen within. In the end, Tenzin stopped building to be remembered and began building only to serve. He taught apprentices to pour their hearts into every stroke of the chisel, every bond, then to gently release the work back into time. Since then, every bridge Tenzin built became more beautiful than the last, not by striving for grandeur, but by being lighter, freer, untethered from the fear of being swept away. If you have ever poured your soul into something, be it a project, a relationship, a dream that made your heart flutter, only to watch it collapse, fade, or take a completely different direction, the story of Tenzin's bridge may not be a distant tale but a memory gently revisiting you. Now without the sharpness of pain. Perhaps you thought that all your efforts were in vain, that every sacrifice was meaningless, every meaning wiped clean by the storm. But if you pause and feel deeply, you might recognize what you built from your heart was never lost. It transformed into something beyond control, yet still connected, just as the washed-away bridge transformed into stone steps leading across the stream in serene silence. What you thought was an end may actually be the beginning of a new continuity. Sometimes what you're building isn't the destination, but the process itself, the moments of wholehearted presence, the breath you held in unseen labor, the sleepless nights shaped by wanting that thing to matter. None of it was meaningless. It remains within you like an underground spring, nourishing layers of awareness deeper than you imagined. Your creation may not endure as you hoped, but the love you poured into it endures. Impermanence is not life's betrayal, but the universe's way of turning what isn't ripe enough to last into grounds for growth of something new. When you stop resisting change and instead accept it as a strange but honest friend, you begin to see that what you thought lost may become fertile ground for your own growth. Perhaps the bridge of your life was a broken relationship, a job ending abruptly, plans cancelled, but if you stay still, you'll sense something quietly growing there, a new vision, a deeper understanding, a freedom no one can take away. In this inward darkness, if you're holding regret for what you could not keep, ask yourself, is there something you received afterward that you couldn't see before? Maybe the bridge that once shattered under your feet paved the way for the person you are now. Someone deeper, more steady, someone who loves without strings, strives without attachment, lets go without emptiness. When the final teacup is placed down, not with a sound, but with a profound sense of completeness that fills the room, you realize that no more words are needed. For the silence has reached deeper than language. Your mind no longer seeks explanations, and your body no longer tightens in control. The guide before you rises slowly, the edge of their robe brushing the floor like a breeze through a forest. Then steps lightly toward a sheer white curtain, hanging like mist. Behind it lies a space never named, Without instruction, you rise as well, your steps moving as though in a sacred dream. Behind the curtain is tonight's final garden, not defined by cleared trees or straight paths, but by layers of light intertwined like fragrance, like memory, like things you once knew but never named. The air here is so gentle that every strand of hair seems to exhale, every pore opening to receive a comfort coming from far away yet deeply familiar. A stream trickles through moss-covered stones, mingling with the whisper of wind in silvery bamboo that seems to smile in the dream. All of it murmurs something ancient yet renewed. Now you need do nothing. Simply be present. Your body settles like a stone dropped into deep water, rising no more with worry, drifting no more with thought. Your breath shifts rhythm, flowing smooth like a small stream winding through long-forgotten lands. No longing remains to hear another story, no craving to grasp another truth. In that silence, you are the story, you are the lesson, you are both teacher and student. Sitting in quiet, listening to your heart breathe softly. Your eyes begin to close, not from sleep, but because there is no reason to keep them open. The remaining sounds, wind, leaves, the moon's hush through the trees, gently lull you into the deepest rest, where the borders between waking and dreaming, seeking and surrendering, self and cosmos dissolve like mist at dawn. In that space, you are no longer someone trying to sleep. You are part of the sky dissolving into darkness. Peaceful as if you never needed to begin. Serene as if you never needed to end. If you remain awake at this moment, it's not that you're not sleepy, but because a part of your soul is still listening. Not to understand, but to feel, to touch, to stay in a state where silence is not absence, but a silent companion. Tonight, you have walked through 3 gates, each opening into a distinct realm, yet all leading to the same place, where awareness returns to itself, where consciousness is no longer veiled by desire, achievement, or outcome. These stories may not promise dramatic transformation, but they can quietly plant a seed in your soul. Perhaps one day, on a calm morning or in an unexpected rain, you remember them and smile for no reason. If listening has softened you, if your breath has lengthened, if tension has momentarily faded, then this video has done its work. Not by teaching you new truths, but by reminding you of what you have always known. You are enough. You are present, and that alone is peaceful enough to rest. If you feel these moments deserve to return on other nights, if your mind needs more gates to return home, then I invite you to follow the channel, not to chase anything, but to hold a place of peace within reach, like a small temple in a noisy world. Thank you for your presence. Before you step away, take one slow moment to sense the journey you've just traveled, not by recalling each story or detail, but by noticing what quietly blooms within. Perhaps a softening where once there was strain, a broader breath in a chest usually compressed, or an unseen warmth flowing through a tangled mind like a forest waiting to be tended. No need to name it, the deepest truth is indescribable. Everything you've experienced, from misty mountain paths to moonlit ponds, from nameless stones in a pilgrim's hand to the bridge carried away but still echoing, are not stories outside of daily life, but gentle metaphors for you. Within you lives one who searched, one who had it all yet felt lacking, and one who poured heart into what couldn't be held. These are not separate, but 3 shades of the same journey. If you see yourself in them, it is no coincidence. In each of us lies a hidden sanctuary, not built of words or walls, but opened through stillness. And when you close your eyes, when the outside world recedes, and breath returns, then that monastic gate appears once again. From there, no matter what you face in life, you can walk lighter, see gentler, and live with a heart attuned to truth without needing to prove anything. Tonight, you are not just falling asleep, you are slowly returning to your deepest inside, where every question doesn't need an answer, every weariness finds rest, every emptiness doesn't need filling to be whole. As you lie still, eyes gently closed, breathing softly, you are also saying to yourself, you are safe. You are home. You no longer need to go anywhere. In that silence, you are the storyteller, a story that needs no words, but is enough to nourish you through every sleep, every dawn, every step in everyday life. If you truly wish to share this gift with other souls, those tossing in bed, unable to quiet their racing thoughts, or walking through a world so loud they never hear the voice of their own heart, there's a simple act that can open that door. Share this video with someone you care about, or simply keep it for yourself in your list of places to return when life feels too heavy. You may not receive praise for it. There may be no numbers showing that you've sown a seed of calm in the world. But what truly touches the heart never needs counting. Each time you return to this video, you yourself may have shifted, quietly and subtly, like a bud growing underground, waiting for the sun to bloom. Because no act of listening is ever wasted. No silence is ever meaningless. No breath is superfluous when it helps you return to yourself. If this channel becomes part of your journey to nourish your soul, I invite you to follow and turn on notifications, not so you won't miss new content, but as a gentle promise to yourself that you always have a peaceful place within reach. A place without judgment, without rush, where you don't have to be better, just you. Fully. Like the moon still full behind clouds. Like the lake still calm even when waves rise. Thank you for traveling all the way here, with eyes open or long closed. May your every sleep be as gentle as wind through the forest. May every morning you wake hold a moment of stillness to begin again with all the gentleness you deserve. If ever you feel lost, remember this space waits for you, not needing a knock. Not needing words, just breathe and listen. That alone is enough. Before the first light of day slips into the corners of your room, before the morning birds or the clatter of daily life begin again, allow yourself to linger in the remaining hush of this night, where you are no longer the one searching, but part of that very stillness, dissolving into it like water that has stopped resisting its own flow. Healing rarely arrives in grand transformations, it seeps in, quietly, like incense that never tries to spread, like moonlight that never demands to be seen, like ancient stories that never need explaining. What has stirred within you through this journey may not need a name, but trust that it continues its quiet work, like a seed growing beneath dark soil. Like understanding arriving softly when least expected, during grief, before decisions, or simply in a peaceful moment without reason. The fewer the words, the more true, the less explanation, the deeper it goes. You may one day forget the details of these stories, the names, the sequence, but not the feeling they leave behind, that tenderness. The slow breath, the sense that someone gently placed a hand on your chest whispering, "All will be well," that will linger along. Tonight, You are not lulled only by images or sounds, but by an ancient current we have forgotten, wordless awakening, presence beyond proof, unconditional acceptance. If you have fully arrived here in these moments, nothing else matters. You have returned. You are breathing. You are loved, not for anything you've done, but simply because you are you. If there is anything to carry from this silent journey, it is not lofty philosophy or fixed teachings, but the real sense that you paused in a rushing world, allowed yourself to be imperfect, unhinged, beyond reason, not trying to please anyone, just being yourself, silent and authentic. Out there, everything may still move fast. Deadlines still wait. Relationships still sway. But the clarity you found tonight remains yours. Regardless of circumstance, it is like a small fire glowing deep in a cave. Whether storms rage or frost settles, returning to that spot is all you need to feel warmth again. You may forget the visuals in the video, the characters' names, or the order of their stories, but you won't forget the moment your heart softened. The tightness in your chest dissolved, the thoughts stopped looping, and you simply lay there in the quiet, realizing what once seemed urgent may no longer be worth holding. Not because it wasn't significant, but because you learned to step back and see with wakeful clarity. A lifetime doesn't require many awakenings, just a few moments like this night. A handful of times you truly come back home and know you can live gently without losing depth. If you've ever doubted your strength, your patience, your worthiness of peace, your presence to the very end is proof otherwise. Nobody must be perfect to deserve rest. Nobody must untangle every difficulty to be allowed into silence. Peace isn't a reward for the triumphant. It is a friend always waiting, just waiting for you to return and sit together. Let tonight be a gentle reminder that you always have permission to pause, not to give up, but to remember life doesn't always require chasing something ahead. Sometimes, it's when you stop that the answers find you. If ever you've felt you don't belong anywhere, that language fails to capture your inner world, know that tonight, in this quiet journey, you have touched a place that needs no words, where untold sorrows are intuitively understood, where unshed tears are gently dried by pure presence. Amid all the noise you hear every day, cars, messages, calls, and the endless chatter of your mind, the silence you've walked through is the most precious sound. Because it doesn't demand answers, doesn't ask you to be anything, doesn't need explanations. It just is. Like a sky without cloud, like still water, like the unconditional source of life. Perhaps you've known to face emotions by doing, reading, talking, analyzing, but tonight, maybe for the first time, you've allowed yourself simply to be, lying, listening, letting uncontrol heal you in subtle yet profound ways. No method is greater than this, because it fits no framework, belongs to no religion or doctrine. It is simply the humble truth. When you stop striving to understand, you begin to know. When you stop forcing yourself to become, you begin to be. When you stop demanding progress, you become whole. The most delicate transformations happen in silence. Not all peace has form, not all light dazzles. Some lights appear only when you close your eyes, when you stop looking outward and finally look within. As tonight shows, that light doesn't come from the screen or the narrator. It comes from the deepest place in you that was never lost, only forgotten. And now, the path back has been lit by silent footsteps, by stories beyond words, by the gentle breath you reclaimed after all those years. Hold that as a precious gift, not to store, not to share, just to know it is yours. And that alone is enough. In the depth of silence where you now lie, a memory may surface, not a clear event, but perhaps a scent, a flicker of light, or a feeling once vivid but buried beneath the weight of so many must-dos. Must-remembers, must-tries. It is no surprise that once you surrender, your mind begins calling back things you didn't know still live within. A childhood afternoon sitting beside your grandmother in tranquil quiet. The rush of breeze through curtains in a room you called home. Or simply a moment standing at a crossroad. Directionless, yet unafraid. These memories return not to burden you, but like a steady backflow, to remind you that within you, the purest things were never missing. No matter how weary life has made you, how many losses you've endured, there remains a part of you unbroken, unlost, unbound, coming alive as you breathe, as your body gently softens. There is no need for confirmation, for the act of returning to yourself needs no proof. In this state, you are no longer the one searching. You are the one resting by the gentle river, understanding that questions are just small ripples, arriving, then fading on their own, amid the countless noises of modern life vying for your attention. The stillness you touch now becomes sacred ground, where you hear echoes from an ancient shell within. Where worthiness does not require being smart, successful, or right. Just being here is enough. Just breathing, just touching who you truly are, behind the masks. Beyond what you show others, in your truest, most hidden self. As dawn nears, there is no chime, no signal marking the shift. Yet all beings recognize it. This, too, is such a moment. Understanding is irrelevant. All that matters is that you know, you are still here. Embraced by a gentleness the outside world may never teach you to hold. The space around you no longer feels like a specific room, with walls, a ceiling, a clock ticking on the wall, but has transformed into a boundless, no boundary realm. Here, thoughts no longer knock. Worries no longer demand answers. Desires no longer cause your heart to flutter with tension. All that exists drifts in that stream of stillness, with neither beginning nor end, as if you are lying in the heart of an unnamed universe, where only your presence matters. You do not need recognition. You do not need to be right. You do not need to be strong. You only need to be real enough to remain. The once dense layers of your mind now dissolve of their own accord like snow melting in early spring, revealing beneath them a soft ground where the seed of true life begins to stir, not needing bright light, not needing dramatic background music, but just quiet, a quiet that does not come from escape, but from a surrender that knows no resistance. What you are experiencing cannot be called happiness in the usual sense, because it brings no excitement. It does not build to a climax, and it needs no soaring words. It is a primal consciousness, simple as warmth in your hand, as a child's deep breath, as the silent composure of someone no longer needing to argue. In that state, the borders between you and the outside world begin to melt. Every notion of time softens. The distance between intention and being collapses, until you can no longer tell who is living in whom. Whether you are living in the universe or the universe is silently breathing through you. With a single breath, you can feel a part of the wind, a part of the pond, a part of the moon quietly illuminating your inner being. No action is needed to sustain this, because the more you let go, the more it spreads, the more you cease to hold on, the more it endures. That calming does not shrink you, on the contrary. It expands your heart until no old limitation can confine it, no longer the wounded one, nor the one who must resist, nor the central character of any story. Now, you are simply a vibrant embodiment of peace flowing through itself, like water flowing through a flute, like light passing through a dewdrop, like a steady heartbeat needing no conductor. If you are still hearing something in this moment, it is not the voice of the world, but the gentle echo from the deepest self within you, where questions no longer require answers, where everything you once were dissolves into a presence that cannot be named yet is more familiar than anything you've ever known. Beneath the subtle movements unfolding within your body, where each heartbeat is no longer drowned out by a whirlwind of inner dialogue, where each inhale and exhale is no longer shaped by any imposed pattern, you are living in a reality that has no need to become anything other than itself. There is no definition wide enough to describe this state, and no framework delicate enough to contain what you are experiencing. Because you are not simply feeling peaceful, you are the peace itself, gently sensing itself through the stillness of your resting body in the night. It is not that the world has suddenly become better, or that every problem in your life has been solved. It is that you have let go of the need for everything to be resolved. What once made you anxious, uncertainty, vulnerability, change, no longer appears as a threat, but as essential elements of a complete life. Only when you stop seeing life as a puzzle needing to be solved do you begin to see the beauty in its imperfection. Like a piece of music that does not need to end on a perfect note, or a poem that is most powerful in its unfinished lines. There is something deeply real held within the pause, the hesitation, the incompletion. In this moment, you are no longer standing outside of life trying to understand it, you are dissolving into it, vibrating with every small echo in the night, attuned to a rhythm that cannot be grasped but is always present. You do not need to think anymore, do not need to sort or evaluate, because your awareness has moved beyond the realm of analysis. It has returned to its essence, non-judgmental, non-selective, simply witnessing with such tenderness and compassion that everything within you can now be seen without needing to be hidden. Even the parts you once felt ashamed of, avoided, or never dared to name, now they too can be brought into the light. Not to be dissected, but to be loved unconditionally. What you are living right now is not a dream, nor is it forgetfulness. It is the deepest kind of remembering, that you have always been here for yourself. Only you were too busy to notice. From here, every action in your life will no longer carry the fear of loss. Because you know there is a place within, a place that can never be lost, never demands anything, and never leaves. A place you can return to just by closing your eyes, softening a little, and stepping through the noise, like a friend who never forgot the way back home. In this stillness, where time seems to stop measuring every movement, where no sound lingers except your steady breath flowing like an underground spring nourishing your soul, you begin to sense something unusual happening, not anything dramatic, not supernatural, just a gentle easing that starts to dissolve every layer of protection you once built to survive a chaotic life. The questions that once weighed heavily on your mind, who am I? What should I do? What is waiting for me? Now fall into silence. Not because you have found the answers, but because you have seen through to their core. Some questions do not need answers, they just need to be felt. Then left alone like a cloud drifting across an open sky. The peace you feel now is not the result of a relaxation technique. Nor is it the reward for perfect meditation. It is something that has always been inside you. A quiet current you never noticed because life was too loud. This state is like standing before an endless ocean. Not needing to know its depth. Not measuring the wind, but letting yourself be pulled into the deep blue. Accepting that you do not understand, do not control, and yet feel profoundly safe. Like children lying on the grass watching the sky without questioning where the clouds come from. You too are being given a new pair of eyes. Eyes that no longer carry bias, wounds, or expectations. They simply see, without forcing, without concluding. In this way of seeing, you no longer distinguish between self and world, between the feeler and what is being felt, because the two have merged in silent presence. There is nothing that needs to be kept, nothing that must be cast away. Everything is allowed to exist just as it is. Nothing more, nothing less. True beauty arises the moment you stop trying to create it, or describe it, you just live it fully. As if for the first time. As if you had never been stolen by the past or imprisoned by the future. The deeper you sink into this, the more you realize that even when doing nothing, you are still being nourished, not by any lofty idea, but by this pure presence where there is nothing to prove, and no one left to convince. What remains is a vast spaciousness where all resistance dissolves. A silence so deep that even your oldest wounds begin to soften. Like a gentle late-season rain washing over withered petals. From this place, there is nothing more you need to carry. Because you have found the only thing worth keeping. A consciousness unbound by fear. No longer lost in ambition. No longer straining to move forward. Just breathe. Just be here, like a final note ringing out and fading into silence. Leaving behind a resonance that lingers forever in the heart of the one who truly listens. In the profound stillness that surrounds you. Where no boundary exists between your inner world and the outer one. Where there is no separation between the one who feels and the stream of emotions slipping through like a thin mist into every breath. Every crevice of consciousness long shut away, you begin to dwell in a space of absolute presence. Every image once carefully built to shape your identity. The illusions of needing to be perfect. The titles you once chased. The wounds you thought were your fate. Now seem like dust on an ancient stone statue washed clean by the first rain of the season. Revealing an untouched, primal essence. Your heart no longer tightens around old memories. Your mind no longer scrambles to assign meaning to each passing moment. Silence has become the foundation of everything, requiring no effort, needing no maintenance. In this total stillness, you no longer care what tomorrow brings. You do not seek to define your place in life. You no longer cling to the feeling of peace to prevent it from slipping away, because you have glimpsed something deeper than peace. Deeper than any sense of refuge. The complete release of all longing. Even the longing for peace itself. Like a river that is no longer held back by dams. You flow freely with yourself, unafraid of bends, of eddies, of disappearing, because you now understand the essence of flow is not to stop. But neither does it need to be forced. In this state, you begin to hear what has always been present but rarely noticed, the subtle resonance of life itself quietly moving beneath the surface. It might be a faint warmth in your chest, a cool current of air as you breathe deeply, a gentle heartbeat that signals nothing but persistently keeps you anchored in the now. There is no need for a heightened or mystical experience to name this state. Because the more you chase it, the further it drifts, the more you try to define it, the more it fades. What is present here cannot be possessed or held. Yet it can become a natural part of your life, if you are gentle enough not to interfere, patient enough not to shatter it, to live without decoration, to be present without display. That is true freedom. Not something granted from outside, but something that has always been within you, like a treasure never locked, waiting for you to be still enough to notice the key has always been resting in your hand. In this darkness, in the quiet into which your soul has drifted, you are stepping out from your own shadow, not to become someone new, but to realize you have never been apart from yourself. Not for a single moment. In this crystal clear purity, where every sound of reason has sunk to the depths of silence, what remains is not emptiness, but a density of life so rich, not through action or thought, but through a vivid sense of presence, as if each cell in your body has opened its eyes, is listening, rejoicing in the sacred simplicity of this very moment. No concept stands between you and what is happening. No lens of the past distorts the present. No hope for the future stretches you thin with waiting. Everything is happening namelessly, aimlessly, yet with a vitality stronger than anything you have ever known. Out there, the world may still spin. People may still chase work and events may unfold in rapid succession. But here in this quiet, you have stepped out of that cycle, not to escape, but to become an observer who is no longer drowning in it. When you no longer try to control life, and no longer let life control you, you begin to understand harmony, not as the result of control, but as the ability to let go at just the right time. In just the right way. With the right heart. A falling leaf in the forest needs no audience to be beautiful. A still wave on a lake needs no recording to be magical. And you, too, are here, not for any grand reason. Not to prove anything, but simply because you are alive. You are breathing. You are an irreplaceable part of this universe. The greatest humility is not about lowering yourself, but in recognizing your smallness within the vastness without fear, instead. Feeling warmed, supported, held by something invisible but ever present. The things that once troubled you, what others think, whether you are enough, whether you are worthy, seem to lose their weight in this space. As if you have stepped into a stream that washes away even the most subtle illusions, leaving you bare but whole, not as some ideal version, but as your true self, untouched and unshaped. This liberation comes not from the outside, but from a deep inner acceptance, that you do not need to become anything else to be loved, accepted, or at peace. That very understanding is the small candle lighting your soul, not burning brightly, not demanding applause, but quietly glowing, enough to illuminate a lifetime once thought lost in the maze of longing and fear. At the point where there is no longer any need to achieve anything, where every effort to reach perfection has fallen like the last petals after a gentle wind, you begin to feel a new kind of silence. Not silence from the absence of sound, but the silence that arises from within when the mind stops reacting to everything around it. No voice speaks, yet you know something deep is moving, like sap rising in a tree after a long winter. without needing to announce itself. You do not need to maintain this state, because it does not come from effort, it arrives when all effort ceases. It feels like shedding a heavy cloak of time, no longer needing to protect yourself from the world, no longer tensing up to adapt or resist, just the natural softness of water, flowing, winding, soaking into the earth without needing to declare its presence. Thoughts that once rooted deep, that once held you hostage in endless cycles of analysis, comparison, and doubt, no longer have power, not because you defeated them, but because you no longer feed them with your attention. With each mindful exhale, you release a fragment of the past. With each silent awareness, you stop constructing the future as a wall to climb. Life is no longer a rushing waterfall sweeping you forward, but an open lake, each ripple something you can embrace, each wave a reflection of your heart. No deep meditation is required, no strained focus, no effort to empty your mind, just the softness not to resist, the quiet not to chase. And each moment becomes a doorway into egolessness, where there is no you experiencing, only experience happening by itself, like rain falling on the earth with no one controlling it. This surrender does not come from defeat. This release does not come from despair. This freedom is not born of control, it is the primal essence of life. The sacred thread every spiritual tradition points toward, though few can speak of in words. Now, you are living it, not through will, not through knowledge, but through your full permission to be. Just as you are, adding nothing, whether this moment lasts a second or an eternity, whether it returns tomorrow or not, it does not matter, because once you have touched it, you will never again be the same, because now you know, peace is not far away. It does not belong to someone else. It does not come from a long journey. It is the place where you stop walking, when there is nothing left to prove, no more goals to chase, no roles to perform. A thin but pristine light begins to spread across the inner space, not following any logical path, not arising for any definable reason. Like the final moment when night gives way to dawn, no one can pinpoint the exact second light replaces darkness. Likewise, you cannot clearly describe what's happening within, you just know that from somewhere deep, a vast, weightless, even sacred sensation is gently rising, needing no assistance, no applause. This state cannot be forced, nor imitated. It only arises when everything is no longer conditioned by fear, by expectation, by the thirst to transcend. Even with no one watching, no spotlight shining, you feel as if you're standing in an invisible temple, where every space is silently praying through its pure presence. No scripture is needed, no lotus posture, no ritual or religious act. You have entered the most sacred state through absolute simplicity, by doing nothing, and yet being more fully present than ever. Strangely, you do not feel grander, nor more special. On the contrary, you feel smaller, lighter, melting into everything without losing yourself. All the things that once made you tense, the ego, achievements, reputation, ideals, the obsession with being forgotten, have become like thin smoke, drifting away and disappearing, needing no rejection, no banishment, simply finding no place to cling to. Perhaps this is what true rest means, not a fixed location, but the ability to live fully with everything that is, without needing anything to change. When you no longer intervene with the natural flow, you begin to understand. Awakening is not a beam of light that pierces darkness, but the ability to see that even darkness has a life, a language of its own. If you are calm enough not to fear it, even the darkest place can become a space where you rest peacefully. In this view, everything is allowed, not because you've become lenient, but because you've seen that everything holds a rightful place in the grand symphony of life. Sadness is no longer wrong. Exhaustion no longer needs fixing. And feeling lost no longer demands immediate direction. Everything can be embraced, understood, held as an indispensable truth of being human. Perhaps the very moment you sit still, quietly, doing nothing, is when the universe most deeply feels that you have come home. Even when you are no longer trying to stay present, no longer identifying yourself as someone practicing or healing, your inner state continues to unfold like a lotus needing no supporting hand, just the gentle sunlight of total allowance. Without interference from the mind, without surveillance by any technique, you have entered a space where all concepts fall away, where you stop seeking, stop resisting, stop defining yourself through past experiences or future expectations. In this space, even old wounds, unnamed scrapes, unseen pains, shames embedded in memory like needles, begin to dissolve like mist in the morning sun. Not by pressure, not by logic, but by the depth of acceptance that renders everything transparent once it is seen. You no longer need to forgive yourself, because there's nothing left to forgive. No need to protect anything, because no one is trying to hurt you anymore. No need to reclaim your worth, because you're honest. Breathing presence already renders everything else irrelevant. Once you taste fulfillment not tied to circumstance, not ruled by success or failure, every worry that secretly lived in you like a parasite will quietly exit, without your resistance. Without your effort to banish it, you become as vast as space, no longer confined by identity, no longer restricted by the masks you wore, no longer introduced by the words society uses to define us. From that place, you can live without winning, love without possessing, give without recording, exist without being praised. The world may still spin in numbers, in battles, in illusions of power and control, but you, with stillness like stone and softness like breeze, are no longer swept along. Not because you're stronger, but because you've stopped resisting. Not because you're better, but because you're softer, more understanding, and you've touched truth without needing to grasp it. That truth isn't found in books, nor can it be passed as knowledge. It arises in a heart quiet enough to listen, still enough to see, empty enough to hold all life's flux without breaking. That heart, beating in your chest right now, needs no validation, no applause, only your recognition. That alone is enough to turn every storm outside into a passing wind, to transform every loneliness into a sanctuary for a light that never goes out. Not every journey needs a destination, nor do all footsteps lead to a place, for some paths exist only for you to go deeper into yourself. Not to discover something new, but to touch what has been forgotten amidst life's noise. In the silence where you now dwell, each moment becomes a doorway, not one that opens to the outer world, but one that leads into the inner realm, vaster than any ocean you've imagined. Here, every breath is no longer a mechanical rhythm, but a slow melody of primal life, where every cell seems to listen, to feel grateful, to rejoice in simply being part of a moment free from judgment, free from being used to achieve anything, Worries about life, work, fame, relationships suddenly feel as light as dust when you're standing on a mountaintop, gazing down at roads you once thought were so important. Not because you've turned your back on life, but because you've found a deeper, quieter, truer layer, where life is no longer a chain of tasks to complete, but a continuous stream of feeling, awareness, and mindfulness. The sadness you once ran from can now sit beside you like an old friend, no longer needing soothing, just needing to be seen with fearless eyes. The failures that once made you feel insufficient now appear as husks, protecting a sprout not yet ready to bloom. You no longer need to live faster than anyone, get ahead of anyone, prove anything to anyone, because you've realized that in living deeply, there is no need to run. Tomorrow, you may return to your usual worries, work, interactions, unnamed challenges, but if you have touched this pure silence even once, every movement afterward will feel different. At the heart of peace, you learn not to try to be peaceful, just don't interfere. And peace will arise on its own. At the heart of love, you see you don't need to be special to be loved, because your unadorned essence is already the purest form of love. At the heart of presence, you realize you need no reason to exist, because being, for no purpose at all, is the truest form of life. From this place, you no longer need reminders, no longer need guidance, no longer need to retrieve what was lost, because nothing was ever lost, only hidden by noise. Now, having heard the voice of silence, everything becomes sacred in its simplicity, like a flower blooming without needing to be seen, like a long night that doesn't need beautiful dreams to become a place of renewal. Sometimes, the most profound truths don't come in brilliant or dazzling moments, but in a very subtle stillness, when you're not doing anything special, just simply being present without judgment, expectation, or resistance. In that space, everything seems to know how to rearrange itself. The knots that used to keep you awake go quiet, as if they no longer need to speak. The unanswered questions soften into gentle acceptance, and the things that once had you tangled in fear or indecision now seem to loosen. Simply because you paused with awareness. You're not controlling the moment. You're witnessing everything healing itself when no longer pulled apart. Just like water only clears when left undisturbed, your mind only sees clearly when it no longer demands, even of the noblest things. Every crack in your soul, those places you once avoided, wrapped in excuses, or tried to patch over with action, now meet the gentle light of mindfulness for the first time. There's nothing wrong with any part of you, nothing that needs erasing, only a lack of deep enough seeing to understand that even your old, painful wounds had their reason for being. When you stop trying to change yourself, you may discover you're finally beginning to change, not on the surface, but at the root. No one can show you this path. No map can guide the way, because each person must walk through their own darkness, guided only by one lamp, unconditional presence. That presence never leaves you, even when you doubt yourself most. Even when you're tired, broken, or lost, it's still there, like a silent friend, waiting for you to be quiet enough to notice. It's not something to believe in, or something to hold onto, it's just something to allow. When you stop pushing away what is, and stop pulling toward what's not yet, reality begins to show itself in its unnamed beauty. Every emotion you once labeled as negative becomes like waves under the sea, sometimes rising, sometimes fading, but never strong enough to make you forget you are the ocean. No state lasts forever, but no state needs to be rejected either. As long as you are truly present with yourself, even if things on the outside haven't fallen into place, you can still smile, not because it's all okay, but because you no longer demand that it be. In order to feel peace, there are nights where nothing seems to happen, and yet your mind feels like a silent lake being hit by 100 pebbles, waves rippling with no clear cause. No way to stop them. On those nights, you don't need more answers or more lessons. You simply wish for someone to sit beside you in silence, just so you'll know that even the most uncertain, aimless moments aren't signs of failure. They're just part of the journey back to yourself. No awakening happens only in light. There are paths you must walk through in shadows, where everything you used to believe gets blurry, and every framework you once clung to begins to break, not because you're wrong, but because you're growing beyond the old boundaries. In those moments, stillness is no longer a reward for meditation. It's the soft coat you wear when you've got nothing left to believe in. That stillness isn't radiant like truth or sharp like wisdom, but it's warm like a breath in a dark room, not needing proof. Just presence, enough to keep you from collapsing in quiet confusion. When you stop clinging to anything for support, that total surrender creates a deeper foundation, one where you no longer rely on feelings just to know you're alive. Emotions may still rise like waves, but instead of drowning you, they become natural expressions of life, appearing and vanishing like clouds. No judgment needed. You can just sit there, not narrating, not explaining, not trying to be a better version of yourself, just being real. So real that there's nothing left to hide or decorate. In that realness, everything glows with a kind of beauty, not from form or structure, but from a delicate sense that everything is exactly where it's meant to be. Even the parts you once wanted to reject. Not everyone sees this right away. It takes deep enough stillness, long enough waiting, and a heart strong enough not to rush transformation. But once you've touched that feeling, even once, you can't return to your old way of living, where peace only exists after everything settles, where life must be arranged to your liking before it feels safe. Now you know, true peace can exist right alongside movement, like solid ground beneath howling wind, like a sky still wide under dark clouds. Peace doesn't lie in the outcome. It lives in your ability to be fully present with whatever is happening. And only when you stop needing it to be different, can you truly see the pure beauty of life. It doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs you to stay long enough to notice that it already is. You don't need a sound to confirm you're alive. You don't need motion to prove your worth. Life is sometimes so subtle. It can be missed by eyes always searching for something grand. But in the very moment you stop looking for something special, a quiet beauty begins to reveal itself, like sunlight slipping through the leaves on a quiet morning. Unnoticed, yet powerful enough to wake the whole garden. The moment you pause long enough to stop treating everything as a means to somewhere else is the moment you begin to see the truth hidden in what once seemed ordinary. A deep, unburdened breath, a hand held for no reason, a silence that doesn't feel empty. No one taught you to live this way, because it isn't written in books or delivered through sermons. It only shows up when the mind has grown tired of striving. And when you're honest enough to face yourself without judgment, without fixing, without disguise. In that space, You don't need to define yourself by what you've done or feel ashamed for what's left undone. You just accept that you exist. And that you're learning to live, step by step, with all your messiness and sincerity. What you once called burdens no longer weigh on you, not because they've vanished, but because the way you carry them has changed. Lighter, gentler, less resistant, even grateful, because they brought you to this moment. In this deep presence, there's nothing to push for, because you see clearly. Everyone has their own timing, their own season, their own rhythm that can't be compared. No more silent competitions of sorrow. No more pressure to awaken on someone else's schedule. No more need to look good just to be seen. You realize a quiet life can still be a sacred one. Even if tomorrow is full of tasks again, even if feelings return without warning, you carry within you a space of peace that has been found, not dependent on condition. Not afraid of being forgotten. Not lost just because you're distracted. That space of peace becomes your home, not a place to escape, but a place to return to. Like home, like a mother's lap, like a lullaby with no words, whispered in some far-off childhood memory. From this moment forward, maybe you no longer need any more philosophies, because you've felt what all the teachings point to. Life doesn't exist anywhere else but in this moment. Lived deeply, honestly, completely, not to trade for anything else, but to simply be as it is. In that crystal clear, pure state, where every sound of the rational mind has sunk into the deep bottom of silence. What remains is not emptiness, but an incredibly dense vitality, not dense through action or thought, but dense with the clear sense of presence, as if each cell is opening its eyes, listening, rejoicing in the sacred simplicity of this very moment. No concept intrudes between you and what is happening. No prism of the past distorts the present. And no future-oriented longing tenses you in anticipation. Everything unfolds without name, without purpose, yet bears stronger aliveness than anything you have ever known. Outwardly, the world may still spin. People may still chase after their jobs. Events may still rush by one after another. But in this realm of silence, you have stepped out of that cycle, not to run away, but to become an observer no longer submerged. When you no longer strive to control life, nor allow life to control you, you begin to understand harmony, not born of control, but from the ability to let go in the right moment, in the right place, with the right mind. A leaf falling in the forest needs no one to see and remains full of beauty. A wave lying silently on the surface of a lake needs no record to be present as a miracle. You're the same. You exist here not for any grand reason, not to prove anything magnificent, but simply because you live, breathe, and are an indispensable part of this universe. The greatest humility lies not in belittling yourself, but in seeing your smallness within the whole without fear. Instead, you feel warmth, embraced, supported by something unseen yet always present. Things that once burdened you, what others think, whether you are good enough, whether you are worthy, seem weightless in this space, as if you have just entered a stream that washes away the most subtle illusions, leaving you bare yet whole, not as some ideal version, but as the unshaped you. That liberation does not come from outside, but from a profound inner acceptance, that you do not need to become anything else to be loved, accepted, or at peace. That understanding is the small inner candle lighting your soul, needing no blaze, no praise, present in silence. yet enough to illuminate a life that once seemed lost in the labyrinth of longing and fear. Right at the point where there is no need to achieve anything. Where every effort toward perfection has fallen away like the last petals after a gentle breeze. You begin to feel a different kind of silence, not the absence of noise, but a silence arising from within, when the mind stops reacting to everything around. No voice rings out, yet you know something deep is shifting, like the sap rising silently in a dried tree after a long winter. Without warning, there is no need to maintain this state, for it does not arise from effort, it arrives when effort ceases. That feeling is like shedding a smelly cloak of time, no longer needing to protect yourself from the world, no longer forcing yourself to adapt or confront. Just the natural softness of flowing water, winding, drifting, soaking into earth without announcing its presence. Thoughts that once took root so deeply, holding you in an endless loop of analysis, comparison, doubt, no longer hold power, not because you defeated them, but because you stopped feeding them with worry. Each mindful exhalation releases another fragment of the past. Each silent awareness stops building the future like a wall to overcome. Life is no longer a waterfall sweeping you forward, but becomes a wide open lake, where each ripple is part of you to embrace. Each wave is part of your reflecting heart. No deep meditation, no tense focus, no effort to empty the mind is needed. Just be soft enough not to resist, still enough not to grasp, and each moment becomes a door opening to non-self, where there is no I experiencing, only experience happening, like rain falling on the earth without a controller. Letting go does not come with failure. Non-grasping is not born of despair. Freedom does not depend on control. That is the most primordial essence of life. The sacred element all spiritual traditions point to, though few can articulate it in words. Now you live in it, not by will, not by knowledge, but by complete permission to exist as yourself. Nothing more. Whether this moment is brief or lasts, whether it returns tomorrow or not, once you have touched it, you will never be the same, because you have known. Peace is not far away. Not someone else's, not found along a long journey. It is the resting point when you stop walking. When there is nothing left to prove, no goal to pursue, no role to inhabit, a very thin yet pure light begins to spread through your inner space. Without any path that can explain it, without any reason that can name it, like the final moment when night turns into dawn. No one can pinpoint the exact moment when light replaces darkness. You also cannot describe precisely what is happening inside. You only know that from a very deep place. A spacious, weightless, even holy feeling silently rises, needing no support, no applause. That state cannot be forced, nor imitated. It can only be born when everything is no longer conditioned by fear, expectation, or longing to escape, even if no one sees, even if there is no light shining through. You still feel as if you stand in an invisible temple, where the whole space silently prays by its pure presence. No need to chant, no need to sit in lotus posture, no need to do anything religious or ritualistic. You have entered the most sacred state by absolute simplicity, by doing nothing yet present more deeply than ever. Strangely, you do not feel bigger, nor more special. Instead, you feel smaller, lighter, merging with all things without losing yourself. Everything that once made you tense, ego, achievements, fame, ideals, the obsession with being forgotten, all turn into thin smoke, drifting away and disappearing, without needing to be pushed away, without needing to be chased. There is simply nothing left to cling to. Perhaps that is true abiding, not being in a fixed place, but the ability to live fully with whatever arises, without needing to change anything. When you no longer interfere with that natural flow, you begin to understand. Awakening is not a light switching on to shine into darkness, but the ability to recognize that even darkness has its own life, its own language, if you're still enough not to fear it. Then even the darkest realm can become where you find restful sleep. In that gaze, everything is permitted, not because you become lenient, but because you have seen that everything has its rightful place in the grand symphony of life. Sadness is no longer wrong. Fatigue no longer needs fixing. Feeling lost no longer requires instant reorientation. Everything can be embraced, understood, held as an essential truth of being human. Sometimes, the very moment you sit quietly, do nothing, is when the universe feels most clearly that you have come home. Even when you are no longer trying to maintain presence, no longer thinking of yourself as someone on a spiritual path or someone being healed, your inner state still continues to unfold like a lotus blooming effortlessly, needing no hand to support it, only the gentle sunlight of full permission, without the intervention of logic, without the oversight of any technique. You have entered a realm where all concepts have fallen away, where you no longer search, no longer resist, no longer define yourself by past experiences or future expectations. In this space, even old wounds, those unnamed scrapes, those invisible pains, those shames embedded in memory like sharp needles, gradually dissolve like morning mist in sunlight. Not through force, not through reasoning, but through a deep acceptance that renders everything transparent when truly seen. You no longer need to forgive yourself. Because there is nothing left to forgive, you no longer need to defend anything. Because there is no one left trying to hurt you, you no longer need to reclaim your worth. Because the authentic presence breathing through you in this very moment is enough to render everything else unnecessary. Once you have touched the sense of wholeness that depends on no condition and is unaffected by success or failure, all the worries that used to live inside you like parasites will quietly find their way out, without resistance, without elimination. You become as spacious as the sky, no longer confined by identity, no longer defined by the masks you once wore, no longer introduced by the words society uses to label each other. From that space, you can live without needing to win, love without needing to possess, give without needing credit, be present without needing praise. The world around may continue to spin with numbers, struggles, illusions of power and control, but you, as still as a mountain and gentle as a breeze, are no longer swept away. Not because you are stronger, but because you have stopped resisting. Not because you are better, but because you are softer, more open, and have touched the truth without needing to grasp it. That truth is not found in books, nor can it be handed down like knowledge. It arises only in a heart still enough to listen, quiet enough to see, and spacious enough to hold the full ebb and flow of life without breaking. That very heart, beating in your chest right now, needs no validation, no applause, only your recognition. And that alone is enough to turn every storm outside into passing wind. Enough to turn every loneliness into a sanctuary for a light that never fades. Not every journey needs a destination. And not every step must lead to a specific place. For there are paths meant only to take you deeper into yourself, not to discover anything new, but to rediscover what was forgotten in the noise of life. In the stillness where you now dwell, every moment becomes a gateway, not to the outer world, but into the inner world, which is vaster than any ocean you have ever imagined. Here, each breath is no longer a meaningless biological rhythm, but becomes a slow melody of primal life, where each cell listens, gives thanks, and rejoices in being part of a moment that is not judged, not used as a means to any end. The concerns of life, work, ambition, relationships to maintain, suddenly become as light as dust when you stand on a high mountain looking down at paths you once thought were crucial. Not because you have turned away from life, but because you have discovered a deeper layer of it, quieter, more authentic, where life is no longer a sequence of tasks to complete, but a continuous flow of sensation, of awareness, of mindfulness. Every sorrow you once ran from can now sit beside you like an old friend, needing no comfort, only a fearless gaze. Every failure that once made you feel unworthy now reveals itself as merely a shell, protecting the tender sprout that had not yet found its time to bloom. You no longer need to live faster than anyone, get ahead of anyone, prove anything to anyone, because you have realized, when you live from true depth, there is no need to rush. Tomorrow you may return to daily worries, to work, to interactions, to unnamed upheavals, but once you have touched this pure stillness, every movement afterward will no longer feel the same. In the depths of peace, you learn not to strive for stillness, just by not interfering. Stillness arises. In the depths of love, you realize you do not need to be special to be loved, because your unadorned being is already the purest form of love. In the depths of presence, you see there is no need for a reason to exist, because existing for no reason at all is the truest form of life. From here, you no longer need reminders, no longer need a guide, no longer need to retrieve what was lost, because nothing was ever lost, only hidden beneath the noise. Now that you can hear the voice of stillness, everything becomes simple to the point of sacredness, like a flower blooming for no one to see, like a long night needing no sweet dream to become a place of rebirth. Sometimes, the most profound things do not arrive in radiant or blazing moments, but in a thin layer of stillness, where you do nothing special. Just simply exist, without judgment, without expectation, without resistance. In that space, everything seems to know how to rearrange itself. The tangled fragments that once kept you up at night fall silent, no longer needing a voice. Unanswered questions soften into gentle acceptance, and the things that once trapped you between fear and indecision now begin to unravel. Simply because you have paused with full awareness. You are not the one controlling the moment, you are the witness, watching everything slowly come back into balance, not through effort, but through the absence of struggle. Like a body of water that only becomes clear when left undisturbed. Your mind also becomes truly lucid only when it stops demanding, even the most noble of outcomes. Every crack in your soul, the places you avoided looking at, the ones you covered with excuses, the ones you tried to patch up with constant doing, are now met, for the first time, by the soft light of mindfulness. No part of you is wrong. No part needs to be erased. What was missing all along was simply a deep enough understanding to see that everything has its place, even the old pain that once seemed meaningless. When you pause long enough to no longer want to change yourself, that is when you begin to change, though not at the surface, but from the very root. No one can point out this path to you. No map can outline the way, because each person must walk through their own darkness, guided only by a single light, unconditional presence. That presence has never left you, not even in your moments of self-doubt, fatigue, heartbreak, or failure. It is always there, like a quiet friend, waiting for you to be still enough to notice. It is not something you need to believe in, nor something you need to grasp. It is only something you need to allow. When you stop pushing away what is happening, and stop pulling toward what has not yet arrived, the present moment begins to reveal itself in all its unnamed beauty. Every emotion you once called negative becomes like an undercurrent beneath the surface of the sea, sometimes rising, sometimes fading, but never again strong enough to make you forget that you are the ocean. No state is permanent, but no state needs to be rejected either. As long as you are truly present with yourself, even if the world around you still feels unresolved, you can still smile, not because everything is fine, but because you no longer require things to be fine in order to feel at peace. There are nights when nothing really happens, yet your mind feels like a still lake being struck by countless tiny stones, forming ripple after ripple, for no clear reason, impossible to stop. On those nights, you do not need more answers or more lessons. You just long for someone to sit beside you in silence, so that even the foggy, lost moments do not feel like a mistake, but rather a natural part of the journey back to yourself. No path of awakening happens entirely in the light. There are always stretches you must walk through dimness, where everything you once trusted begins to blur, where the structures you once leaned on begin to crack, not because you were wrong, but because you are being expanded beyond your old limits. In those times, stillness is no longer the reward of meditation, but becomes a thin cloak you wrap around yourself when there is nothing left to believe in. That stillness may not shine like truth, may not sharpen like wisdom, but it warms you like a breath in a dark room. It needs no validation, only presence, and that is enough to keep you from falling in the quiet storms. When you stop clinging to anything as an anchor, it is the act of letting go that gives you a deeper foundation, where you no longer rely on emotions to know you are alive. Feelings may still rise like waves, but instead of drowning you, they become natural expressions of life, arising, dissolving, like clouds in the sky. Free of judgment, you can sit there, needing no narrative, no explanation, no self-improvement, only truth. Truth so unfiltered, there is nothing left to hide, nothing left to embellish, and in that truth, everything becomes drenched in beauty. Not a beauty shaped by form or structure, but a quiet knowing that everything is exactly where it belongs. Even the parts you once wished to eliminate. Not everyone sees this right away. It takes depth, stillness, and a heart that has endured enough to no longer rush to transform everything. But once you have touched that awareness, even just once, you cannot go back to the old way of living, where peace only arrived after all the storms passed, where everything had to be under control before you could rest. Now, you know that true peace can coexist with every movement, like the earth standing firm beneath strong winds. like the sky remaining vast even when covered by dark clouds. Peace is not found in the outcome, but in the ability to be fully present with whatever is unfolding, and only when you stop wishing it to be different. Do you begin to see the most pristine beauty of life? It needs nothing from you to be perfect. It only needs you to stay long enough to realize it already is. You do not need a single sound to establish your presence. You do not need any movement to create value. Life is sometimes so subtle that it can be missed by eyes that are always searching for something grand. It is in the very moment you stop looking for anything special that a quiet beauty begins to reveal itself, like sunlight slipping through the leaves on a peaceful morning. Unseen by anyone, yet enough to awaken the whole sleeping garden. When you pause long enough to no longer see everything as a means to somewhere else. That is also when you begin to see the truth hidden in the simplest things. A deep breath unburdened. A hand held with no intention. A silence that does not feel empty. No one can teach you how to live like this. It is not written in books. And it does not come from lectures. It only appears when the heart is tired enough of trying to become. When you are honest enough to face yourself without judgment, without fixing, without decoration, in that state, you no longer need to affirm yourself through what you have achieved, nor feel ashamed for what is still incomplete. You simply accept that you are here, learning to live imperfectly, sincerely. Moment by moment, what once felt like burdens no longer weigh you down, not because they are gone, but because the way you carry them has changed, lighter, softer, less resistant, and even, at times, grateful for how they brought you back to this moment. In that depth of presence, there is nothing left to force, because you clearly see, everyone carries a different rhythm. A different season, a pace of life that cannot be compared. No more quiet competition between sorrows. No more expectation to awaken on schedule. No more pressure to live beautifully to be seen. Only a natural stream of life flowing through you, slow, gentle, without purpose, without destination. Even if tomorrow is filled with work again, even if emotions return in unexpected forms, you now carry within you a stillness that has been recognized, a stillness that needs no conditions, that fears no forgetting, that does not disappear just because you become preoccupied. That stillness will be the place you can return to whenever life gets chaotic, not as an escape, but as a return, like home. Like a mother's embrace, like a wordless lullaby once heard in a distant memory. From this moment on, you may not need any more philosophy, because you have felt what all teachings point to. Life does not exist anywhere else but in the very moment you are living, deep enough, true enough, whole enough that it needs no exchange for anything else. Even as the world out there keeps demanding that you run faster, perform better, become something more worthy in the eyes of others, there is a place inside you that remains still, like a deep valley untouched by the winds of time, where every echo falls silent before the sincerity of presence that needs no proof. In that space, you do not need to brace yourself to be strong. Do not need to pretend to be calm. Do not need to suppress emotions to appear enlightened, because no one is watching. And no standards remain to be passed. You are allowed to live as yourself, no walls, no masks, no pressure to fit a likable or admirable image. That feeling, when a person is no longer divided inside by old conflicts, no longer torn between who they think they should be and who they really are, makes everything around you soften, lighten, Deepen, like the earth exhaling after the rain, needing no words. It is not a special state, only a simple return to yourself, as if you have stopped pretending, stopped resisting, stopped interpreting, and simply sat still with one hand over your chest, feeling the heartbeat that has never failed you, even after all the times you abandoned it. Every time you listen without interfering, every time you exhale without trying to change something, every time you pause just to be here, not to get somewhere, you are doing what many people never get the chance to do in a lifetime, to truly live. Without any title attached, no one else can give you that feeling but you. Because only you know how many layers you have worn, how many storms you have endured, how many silent collapses you have survived alone. No one else can fully understand how you made it through those long nights. So no one else can give you the peace you deserve. That peace only blooms when you stop handing the power to define your worth to the outside world. In that moment, your gaze will shift, not scanning to judge or sort, but softening, as if to say, everyone is on their own path. A falling leaf is not meaningless. A tear is not a sign of weakness. A moment of being lost is not something to hide. All of it is simply life moving through each person, each heartbeat, each breath, and if you can be gentle enough with yourself, you will find your heart becoming gentle with others too, not needing them to always be right, always be strong, always be awake, but loving them even in their hurt, accepting them even in their most unfinished versions. To see that way, to live that deeply, is a sign of a heart that has stopped trying to master the world and has started to touch something more miraculous, to simply be a part of it, lightly, truthfully, fully, just as it is. When the journey inward reaches its deepest point, where there is nothing left to seek, nothing left to explain, you realize that through all this time, you have not truly gone anywhere at all. You have just taken each step closer to life itself, which was always waiting for you to notice. With a bare and unguarded heart, every word in this video is only like a breeze, brushing the surface, but what truly transforms happens where language ends, where you begin to breathe slower, feel deeper, see more clearly without effort. Perhaps after this moment, you will return to your everyday rhythm. There will still be worries, collisions, exhaustion, but something has changed quietly. You now know that there is a place of peace within you that no one can take away. No circumstance can shatter. No chaos can erase. That stillness is the secret meditation hall of your soul. The invisible temple you can return to any time, with one complete breath. One true pause. Thank you for staying with me until this final moment. If what has been shared touched you, helped you settle, brought ease, or simply gave you peace for a few breaths, I invite you to subscribe to Silent Soul Garden, so we can keep holding this space together, where you are allowed to be yourself, without effort. Wishing you a deep sleep, a gentle dawn, and a heart that always remembers the way home.